Welcome to this episode of Clutch Time, where we bring you the sports topics and give you our opinions on it. I'm Jeremy Culver.
And I'm Carl Farron. There's a lot going on in college sports right now. The winter season is coming to a close, and the spring season is starting to begin. So let's get to some Hawk Talk. Quincy basketball was riding a high road with both the men's and women's team finishing up successful seasons. Each was among the top teams in the GLVC conference and were set on entering the postseason tournament. The Hawks had high hopes to go far in the tournament with their goal set as winning the championship. Unfortunately, the men's postseason play was cut short after their first game. We now look to support our Lady Hawks in their first postseason game soon. What is your reaction to the men's season, and how will the women be handling their tournament, Jeremy?
The season, I think they overachieved. They were really good, don't get me wrong. There was a good season. Yet when you lose a player at the caliber of Tyler Thompson early at the beginning of the year, that's a huge blow. And I myself, and I know many different people, kind of saw the season as lost. But that just shows the toughness of the team to be able to overcome and still run strong and put a good season in. The one thing, though, is you can't be capable of home. You can't look at it as successful at home. The men lost back-to-back home games now. That hadn't happened in 4 seasons, and they shot 34% from the field in that game. To win with shooting 34% is not going to happen. Now let's look at the girls. The girls are doing really good, too. They're on a current 11-game win streak. And I don't see them losing to Lewis University. The Lewis University, they lost to the Hawks last game, 72-51 in their only meet this year, and the Lewis record is 8-19. I don't see the Lady Hawks going into the game cold.
I agree with you on that, Jeremy. The men, I would say they did have a successful season. The postseason is a little bit of a disappointment. I was at the game. The Drury played outstanding defense. There was no penetration. We couldn't get any rooms for our threes. And we would be down by 10, fight our way back, tie the game back up, and then go down by 10 again. It was a disappointing way to go out. But the Hawks, overall, they had a successful season, the men did. The women are doing even better than the men, though, as you said. For them to lose the first round like the men did, that would be even more disappointing, I think, for as well as they're doing. You mentioned the 11-game win streak they're having. They are doing spectacular right now, and Lewis was seeded 12 in the rankings for the tournament, while Quincy was seeded number 1. So
the Lady Hawks softball team kicked off their season with back-to-back tournaments in Decatur, Alabama, and Denton, Texas. The season has not started off exactly as they would hope, though. They went 1-3 in Alabama and 2-3 in Texas, bringing their season total to 3-6. In a story covered earlier, Carl, you pointed out that they lost their two-time All-American softball player, Torie Bunzell, to graduation. How do you think the team will do without Bunzell, and how do you see the team's performance in those tournaments?
Well, the tournament, it's the beginning of the season tournament, Jeremy. It's meant to get all the kinks out and see how the team's going to get together. It's a tournament. It's not a part of the conference games. So now not having Torie in the lineup, that is a big, hit to the team. But as I interviewed Coach Overt earlier, she said that Lauren Francis, a junior, is ready to step up and take her role in the pitching staff, while as the rest of the team, we have a very young team. Half the team is freshmen, so they don't even know life with Torie. They just want to go out there and win.
Yeah, that's a good point. The only thing, though, that I did look up is Torie Bunzell actually finished last year with a ERA of 1.12, with no other pitcher having an even winning record. The closest was Lauren Francis. She was 4-4. to lose a pitcher who you relied on so much, it's going to be hard to turn around and look at a season to be successful. I think this is going to be the rebuilding year. As you said, a lot of the players are freshmen, sophomores, they're underclassmen. So they're young, they're still going to develop, they're going to make mistakes. As you see, they only hit 241, if I believe, in the tournament. They're going to develop, they're going to get better. But like you said, it's the beginning of the season. You got to expect mistakes, you got to expect faults. But hopefully by the end of the year, they start to kick out some of those kinks. They start to work it out, and those young players develop and get into leadership roles as they're going to be the teams that take over.
That is another good point, Jeremy, but I still think that we could pull out a good season because, like I said, half the team is freshmen, but the other half are juniors, and juniors are upperclassmen, and they know life with Torie, and they know what winning is like, and they don't want to go on a losing streak with that. So they're going to be leadership's going to have to be looked to for them to bring the team up. The Hawks baseball team won the GLVC conference tournament last year with a lot of senior leadership. Even with the loss of the senior leadership, the team was still confident and excited with all the new prospects they had picked up in the offseason. The team started off the 2012 season with the tournament down in Alabama. The team went 0-3 this past weekend with a rough couple games. Do you think the results of this tournament will define the rest of the year, Jeremy?
Not at all. We have too much talent to think that this is going to continue. Even with Brian Thompson, he was picked as the Tino Martinez watch list, which is the top Division II athletes. I would be shocked if we went the entire season and did not pick it up. Also, you have to keep in mind, though, we played the 9th-ranked University of North Alabama, and they had played 11 games already before we even got down there. They're starting to have the games under their belt. They were ready, working out those kinks that we talked about in the softball story. While our guys, this was their first tournament, their opening of the season. They're going to make mistakes. It's going to be sloppy looking, but that's a 9th-ranked team against a team that's just opening up their season. So I do not see this as defining our season.
I think it's a mental thing, Jeremy. The talent is there. Even though it's a lot of young talent, it's still there. It may be part of a rebuilding year just because of that youngness that we have on the team, but it's there. The mental thing is they have to keep going. Like the guys that we had on the team previously are going to have to know what they did last year, and they have to learn from the seniors that we had last year and take that leadership upon themselves to give it to all the young guys we have on the team now. And they have to be strong mentally to not let them get this down, this tournament. And they have to continue to pick it up because, as we said before, it's just the beginning of the season tournament, just to get all the kinks out.
Yeah, but the one thing, though, that I think when we talk about senior leadership, we have a leadership that some clubs don't even have, and that's having a coach who previously played in the pros. Coach Ray V played with the Minnesota Twins, so he knows what it means to have that leadership, have that push to get into the pros, and I think that our players look to him as actually a leader. You look at your coach as a coach, but at the same time you look at your players as leaders. But with him having that experience, I think those young players are going to have no problem going after and following Coach Ray. Last episode, we talked about the rising star Jeremy Lin of the New York Knicks. This week, we are going to talk about the team as a whole. Jeremy Lin may have been shining in the spotlight in New York, but that was without the help of Carmelo Anthony, who was sidelined with a groin injury, and Amari Stoudemire, who had left the team due to the death of his brother. Now the entire team is back and some new faces. Baron Davis is finally healthy and playing, and the team signed J.R. Smith, freshly back from playing in China. The second half of the season will begin for the Knicks against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Do you think the team will be able to make the playoffs with these changes?
It's still hard to tell, Jeremy. Since Jeremy Lin has joined the team and started playing, they have been hot. Their record's been 9-3. But with all the guys coming back, it's a bit of a different story. Yeah, they've all been on the team before and they've practiced and played with and against each other before, but playing all on the same court at one time, it's still a little bit of a different story. The thing that the talent's there and the drive's there for them to make the playoffs. But it may take time for them to gel together so they can get things going smoothly, and that time might cost them, and they might not make the playoffs because of that.
I definitely understand with time because they need to gel, especially J.R. Smith was just signed straight out of playing in China, and Baron Davis has been hurt all year, so he has not been able to be on the court, and they need to learn that chemistry with each other. But when you look at it, the very first game Amari Stoudemire came back, the New York Knicks went and beat the defending champions Dallas Mavericks in New York. And it wasn't just a small victory. They actually beat them, I think, by double-digit points. When you look at it, they started off the season 8-15, and now are 9-3 since. I think they are on a hot streak. And a lot of people will point out they do play in the Eastern Conference, which is seen as the weaker conference. So I think they will be able to slide in either way, even if they don't put out an outstanding record. I think about a 500, a couple of games above 500 will make them into the playoffs.
Now, if I'm a Knicks fan, Jeremy, the only thing I'm worried about is the game against the Miami Heat. Now, the Miami Heat's got Bosh, Wade, and LeBron, and they're the all-stars. You know, they're supposed to take it to everybody. But not only did they show their talents, they shut Jeremy Lin down. Jeremy Lin was not a factor in that game. He could do nothing. The pick and roll was non-existent. Driving the lane, he could do nothing. And that, I think that's a mental thing for Jeremy Lin, him being another young guy, and he's going to have to get past that with the rest of the team. There's a lot going on in the NHL. The trading deadline was Monday night, and teams made their moves, but before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's take a look at the current standings of the league. The New York Rangers are safely atop the Eastern Conference at the moment, with the next 6 to 7 teams all chasing them. They're all 7 to 10 points behind. The West is a bit more interesting. Detroit's 23 home undefeated streak finally ended, and the team is still sitting 2 points behind Vancouver and tied with St. Louis in points, but with St. Louis still having the tiebreaker. Even after Chicago's losing streak, they are still right in the thick of the top 8 teams in the West. How do you think these standings will hold up until the playoffs?
I'm nervous. I'm a huge Hawks fan. I love the Blackhawks, but they have not been able to show a way to consistently win since they took over the top spot in the NHL. Last month, they were actually top in the NHL in points, and now they are sitting at 6th in the West. That is a huge fall. They went on a 9-game losing streak, then won 4, and now back on a 4-game losing streak. I don't see them as winning, and the people they got in the trade deadline do not fill those holes that they had in the team. The team, though, that I do think will, no matter what, make the playoffs is going to be St. Louis and Detroit. When we look at them two, they're the two more complete teams in the West, in my opinion. Detroit may be on a 2-game losing streak now at home, but I think that they will overcome those. They have the seniority, the leadership. They'll be able to overcome those changes.
The West is definitely going to be the conference to watch, I think. With, like I said, in the East, New York is atop. They're safe there right now. And the rest of the teams, they'll be mixing it up in their positions, and they'll be fighting for seeds. But nobody's going to chase anybody and upset them. So that'll just be entertaining. The West, though, there's going to be some drama. You got your top 4 teams. You have Detroit, St. Louis, Nashville, and Vancouver. Those are 4 very, very strong teams. And once we get to the playoffs, those teams are a lot better than a lot of teams in the East. So those are going to be the games to watch. And you still have the lower half, the lower tier that are still going to be fighting, and they could upset somebody once we get to the playoffs.
Yeah, the only team that I think will be able to, if the Hawks don't change something to start winning, they'll be able to at least slide in with an 8 seed, because San Jose is the only other team who's doing awful. The season may be over, but that just means the offseason is underway. The NFL has started free agency with a lot of big names on the market. With this season being the first full offseason under the new collective bargaining agreement, things could play out differently in years past. So, Carl, which 2 players do you think their team needs to re-sign if they want a chance to win?
Well, Jeremy, I actually picked 2 players from the same team. I think the Colts need to re-sign Peyton Manning and Reggie Wayne. They cannot go without them. Peyton Manning built that house. He is the Indianapolis Colts. This season, the Colts went 2-14. Well, they proved that Peyton Manning, he makes the team. They are always contenders in the past. And Reggie Wayne, on the other hand, he has got, since 2004, he's gone for over 1,000 yards, except this past season. He went for 960 yards, but that's without Peyton Manning. 960 yards is still quite an accomplishment, and I think they need to re-sign him because they don't have many other receivers to go to. And I also think they need to keep Peyton Manning because they had the first-round draft pick, and if they can get their hands on Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning can be a great mentor to him.
The only thing, though, is, as you said, they have the number 1 pick for Andrew Luck. Yes, Peyton Manning being there to mentor Andrew Luck would be great, but Peyton Manning already said that he does not really want to have that happen because with the number 1 pick, you want them to play right away, and that's going to be the issue. But I do agree with you on Reggie Wayne. Reggie Wayne does need to be signed, especially with Pierre Garçon, their second leading receiver, now also a free agent. They're going to lose a lot of weapons with also Dallas Clark. But the 2 players I think need to be is Matt Forte of the Chicago Bears. I mean, of course, he's the league leader in total yards from scrimmage with 1,487 yards last year before he got injured. He continues to lead the Bears in rushing, continues to be their leading receiver as a running back. Every year he is the complete running back. He needs to be back. The one guy that I think is surprising to some people but not to me is Stevie Johnson from the Buffalo Bills. He is the only guy on the Bills team who has had 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons the last 2 seasons. The closest to him is last year David Nelson with 658 and Lee Evans 578 the year before. He's with Baltimore now.
And now we come to the last part of the show. Let's get to our buzzer beaters. Just some food for thought. The St. Louis Cardinals are now World Series champions, but yet their manager, Tony La Russa, is retiring. They've hired Mike Matheny, who has in the past been a great Cardinals catcher, and he was a great part of Cardinals history. He had a lot of support from the fans, but is he too young? He's only 42 years old. This is his first coaching job as in the major league. Me personally, I think that's a little bit shaky. What happened to Jose Oquendo? Jose Oquendo has been there for years. I thought that maybe they might have eased in Mike Matheny into the process, but they've gone ahead and let him jump into the manager's position. Tony La Russa, just as a side note, will be coming out of retirement to manage the National League in the All-Star game. I think this has only happened once within the past 30 years, and I think that will be cool and interesting to watch, especially since for baseball, the All-Star game is one of the few All-Star games that has actually something at stake.
March is just around the corner, and that means March Madness in college basketball. Now, I love this time, and I always watch any game I can. But the one thing I think I'm going to miss this year is Illinois being in those games. Illinois started off the season 10-0 this year and looking great, beating a ranked Gonzaga in the early season, but have now since been 17-12 and are just now coming off a 6-game losing streak. Yes, they did win the other night against the Iowa Hawkeyes, but Iowa has been a bad team this year too. Now I love Bruce Weber. I think he's a great coach, but it's time for us to move on. Bruce Weber has not shown to be able to get those big top recruits of Illinois. Do you remember Dwayne Wade? Marquette. Derrick Rose? Memphis. And the big star this year, Anthony Davis? Kentucky. If we cannot even lure our own players into the University of Illinois, from Illinois, then I think there needs to be a change and we need to find something new. Thank you for joining us this week's episode of Clutch Time.
And on behalf of us here at Clutch Time, we want to wish our own Jeremy Culver a happy birthday. I'm Carl Farron.
Be sure to check back on our next episode. Good night, everyone. I'm Jeremy Culver.